Mr. Brock, it has been a little over a year since our first interview.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. What has happened since?
My gosh, how quickly a year goes by. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Our battle started 3.5 years ago, and of course MVHS promised there'd be shovels in the ground in 18. We saw no shovels in the ground in 18. Then they filed their certificate of need in Albany. One of the contingencies was shovels in the ground in January of 19. Of course, we saw no shovels in the ground January of 19. Now their next target date for shovels in the ground is September of 19. And I'm happy to report to you, Luke, today that they have as good a chance of getting shovels in the ground September of 19 as they did in 18 and January of 19.
So what new has come out of the email scandal? That was a very important thing. The last time we spoke, what have we seen after going through all 700 of those emails?
Yeah, I think it was close to 748 or 750. I mean, what we've seen is what we talked about on day one 3.5 years ago, and of course with you a year ago, and that is that this was never a hospital decision. This was a political decision. This was for the local politicians, regardless of party, because by the way, Luke, this has never been a political issue. There are people both from the Republican and Democrat Party who have pushed this ill-conceived hospital downtown. What these emails have proved is that it is that group of people that at the expense of the many, the taxpayers of the city of Utica and the region want to line the pockets of a few. This is what is so troublesome, and this is clearly what we were able to see from the emails and what we've been able to see to this point forward. Because this hospital concept downtown still to this day makes no sense and certainly doesn't add up economically.
Now, you said that it was a decision made by the politicians. What motivation would these politicians have to move this hospital downtown? What's in it for them?
Well, sometimes when a politician lines the pockets of a few, those few turn around and line the pockets of the politicians, helping them to get reelected, helping them to get to the next level if they want to run for a different office, or just helping them out in general. This is truly a local swamp that is behind this effort. You talk to the average citizen in the community, in Utica in particular, but certainly countywide, they think this idea is just ludicrous. Now imagine this, we're going to build a hospital downtown. We're going to level 34 acres of blocks. Now we're not even going to build it with a proper foundation. We're going to build it on a cement slab. The way you would build a Walmart to exist with a lifespan of between 35 and 50 years. That's how they're constructing this thing. So it begs the question, we're going to demolish a third of our downtown, spend nearly $1 billion when all is said and done to build a hospital that won't even last 50 years? So it doesn't even have the proper foundation. Now they like to say state of the art. It's a great line, state of the art. Then you peel back the onion. You realize they don't have enough money to buy new equipment. They're moving the same old equipment from the two current hospitals into the new hospital. We don't have pediatrics today in our hospitals, formal pediatrics care through MVHS. Someone as young as you, Luke, if something happens, you're off to Syracuse or Cooperstown or Albany. The new hospital does not have pediatrics. It will not have a formalized pediatric wing. It'll have 269 fewer employees with 180 fewer beds. And somehow, this is going to be an economic stimulus? Everything we've said for 3.5 years is as true today as it was then. People say to me, well, Jim, you look like you prepare for Luke's interviews. Do you have cue cards? Is he stopping it a lot so you can change what you say? Well, you and I both know you never stop this interview. I never ask for a break. And I never ask you to re-record anything. Because what I said yesterday is what I said a year ago. And what I said a year ago is what I said 2 years ago and 3 years ago. I never have to remember what my story was because it's never changed.
When you say that it won't bring back economic stimulus, we went to the Buffalo Hospital District, which is within the center of their downtown area, which is
It is
in-
not technically, Luke, in downtown. So I will beg to differ with you there, and I know Buffalo very, very well. It is not in downtown Buffalo per se. But go on with your question.
Well, if we're talking downtown, you would say that Genesee Street is downtown, right?
No, I would not say Genesee Street is downtown.
You wouldn't say Genesee Street
And that
here
is
is downtown.
That is really the fallacy in some people's minds, that it is only each side of Genesee Street, which is technically downtown. We look at downtown as a much larger piece in the city of Utica.
I'm not saying that Genesee Street is all downtown. I'm saying that Genesee Street is downtown, and it tends to be the center because that's where most of the larger structures and the Stanley, you see the county office building, you see most of the center of that city is
Well,
on Genesee
what larger
Street.
structure is there than the Hotel Utica and the Aud? And they are both in the Columbia Lafayette neighborhood.
There's Grace Church, there's the county office building, there's the Stanley, they have all that line down there. And then also it's in the Columbia Lafayette district. I'm not debating the fact that the Columbia Lafayette district is in downtown. I'm saying that based off of the size of Utica comparatively to the size of Buffalo, if we're considering the Columbia Lafayette district a part of downtown, if you kind of expand it on a larger scale, the area where the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus is technically within that center of the city. But regardless, when we're talking about a hospital being put into an urban area, whether or not it's actually technically downtown is up for debate. But when you put a hospital into an urban area, we're seeing businesses coming back because they're putting down there, they're expanding on it. It wasn't all within that first 5 years. It was over the course of 10, 15 years of putting medical schools down there, putting all brand new facilities, and that brought these vacant businesses. We talked to the
No, let me
citizens
stop
of
you
Buffalo.
right there. There is no medical school coming. And what's even worse, in our project here, to differentiate it from the example in Buffalo, our nursing school isn't even moving downtown.
Yet.
Well,
Do we know?
let's remember that the original concept sold to this community 3.5 years ago is that we were going to concentrate all medical services on one campus. We were consolidate one medical campus. We later found out that Faxton and the services provided there are not closing. We found out that the nursing school is not moving. We found out that services currently offered at St. Luke's are not moving. Rehab, nursing facility, and so on, the nursing home. So it begs the question, the whole premise of doing this was to combine and consolidate onto one medical campus. We're not even achieving that. Now, you brought up economic impact of a hospital area. They have mentioned they're going to do this by creating MOBs, which are called medical office buildings. They're going to be developed by a private developer. Now, an MOB will not be built unless it's on a pilot program, once again off the tax rolls. Secondly, you go to Notre Dame. What are you surrounded by at Notre Dame? You're surrounded by a medical district that exists not only in the New Hartford part surrounding Notre Dame, but more importantly, the Utica part and the Utica Business Park. Let's assume just for a minute that they are correct, that they can fill these new MOBs downtown, medical office buildings. You have to rob Peter to pay Paul to do it. You have to pull the medical businesses out of the Utica Business Park, all of those buildings now currently off of a pilot program, all tax paying, and entice them to go downtown, to go into a pilot program medical office building to relocate. Now we'll talk about the businesses up and down Genesee Street. Where do you think these people are going to come from if they're going to leave the areas around the current hospitals? They are going to vacate all those properties. What we are really about to do is rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. The only thing missing is the band playing.
But when we're saying that this is, we haven't moved the nursing facilities, we haven't moved the school downtown yet, isn't accepting this $300 million, well, it may not be for it's not the entire project that we want to see come downtown, but isn't this a first step in moving towards having nursing school downtown and denying this money for a downtown facility and denying this money for a centralized medical district in the heart of the city in the heart of the Oneida County, isn't denying that money a step backwards in trying to get a centralized medical district where we can have it like we have it in Buffalo, like they have it in Buffalo, where it's all centralized, where we have a school, where we have multiple hospitals down there providing pediatric facilities and all that other medical.
You bring up a very valid point. So what you're now advocating is that because we're building it on such a limited footprint, 34 acres of blocks of our downtown, that we now need to start taking the blocks adjacent to. So now which properties are we going to start to take? Are we going to now start to take properties in Varick that we just newly branded as the Brewery District, and the businesses and the excitement, especially for young people in and along Varick Street? Are we going to start to condemn those and steal them through eminent domain? The problem is they are about to build a hospital in an area that cannot expand. So even going with your premise, if we could, there will not be room in and around there to expand, even in the best case scenario, without taking more property, more homes, more people's businesses, and doing it through one of the most evil ways you can, and that's eminent domain.
How big is your group has pointed out that the building itself for the hospital is going to be about 2 acres. So there will still be at least, for counting, not counting like parking and everything, 32 acres on this footprint to put other facilities and other buildings, and then there are other buildings where they can expand if need be for that medical district. There's still more room down there. This is not going to be taking up the entire thing. They're trying to take a first step towards making this district be centralized and in downtown.
Well, you just made my point, didn't you? We have 64 acres at St. Luke's. We have a cogeneration plant that provides energy efficiency to not only the hospital campus, but the college campus as well. There is no better place to expand, to create eds and meds down the road, and the synergy of those two is a real job creator, than to do it at the St. Luke's campus, buttressed up to Utica College that many of us hope someday becomes UU. And it will with graduate programs, and we hope those graduate programs will once again operate in conjunction with the hospital across the street. That's where it should be built, with plenty of room to expand and achieve all those things you're talking about without leveling our downtown.
But if there's already a cogen plant, there's already things up at St. Luke's, including the existing hospital, which the MVHS has said it's not viable to be building a new hospital either on the campus or in the spot of the existing hospital without shutting down all medical facilities.
Let me
in the
address
area.
that point, because it's been such a misnomer, such a fallacy. Many of us that are certainly older than you, your grandfather in particular, will remember that when they doubled the size of the St. Luke's campus and built the Allen Calder wing, not a single surgery was canceled, not a single stay in that hospital was altered. Just travel to any major city, you see skyscrapers being built a foot apart. Nothing stops in the building next to it while the building is going on. So this fallacy that we can't build there is exactly what I said. It is a fallacy. It is once again trying to sell to this community the idea that we should tear up a historic downtown so that we can line the pockets of a few at the expense of the many.
Let's move on to the 3 board members that you said came forward and had firsthand knowledge in board meetings that politicians were trying to corrupt the process. Are you willing to supply those names of the 3 board members?
I haven't for 3.5 years. I go way back with these board members. They took me into their confidence. And to their credit, because of them, I was able to form No Hospital Downtown before any announcement was made to the public. We were geared up, we were ready to go, we were ready to respond because of the information they provided to us. That was critical. And one thing I will not do is ever throw anyone under the bus. But what was proven by those emails that you brought up earlier was that everything I said from day one, and called a liar for saying it, was later proved out in those emails because they substantiated the fact that they were forcing this down the board of MVHS's throat.
If there were politicians that believe that the downtown site would be the least risky site for them, that they believed it would be beneficial to the community, what is the harm in those politicians saying things like, I relayed to Scott Parra, the CEO, my preference for a downtown site, as Congressman Berdissi
I
said?
think we would agree that relaying, I would prefer that site, rather than saying, if you don't put it there, there will be no money for you. Rather than saying, as the current congressman, then assemblyman, said, and I'm paraphrasing now, that if they don't put it where we tell them, I'm out, and they can expect no future help from the state and from me. Now, this is pretty dramatic stuff. And so while they're doing this to the board members were reporting what pressures they were under. Look, we have a bankrupt healthcare system. Someone dangled $300 million out there to try to get them out of trouble. I'm not faulting the board for doing what they did. They should have stood up. They should have been tougher. They should have said, yes, we'll take the $300 million. We're going to make all $300 million go to healthcare, and we're going to make the St. Luke's campus the envy of all in the area. They didn't do that. They buckled under. They said, fine. But as they unanimously approved the downtown location, lest we ever forget, they also voted unanimously to approve St. Luke's as the alternate site if it was determined that it was not feasible to go downtown. And there were those board members on that board that said, you will get our vote reluctantly for downtown. As long as it is demonstrated it can't go downtown, we've already approved St. Luke's. That's a critical element here. But the bottom line is, we are displacing businesses every day. Every day you read about a business that has now agreed to leave. They're not staying in the city of Utica unless they get a pilot program. Matter of fact, the most recent announcement with the healthcare business, that Mohawk equipment, hospital equipment, where are they going? Well, they're going to Little Falls. Yeah. Brandeis announces they're going to Whitestown. Now think about how detrimental that is. One, Utica in the Brandeis situation loses that tax base. Now they're going to move to Whitestown. Whitestown has to give them a 70,000 square foot structure, which also will be on a pilot program. So Whitestown loses out. At some point, the taxpayers in one of the poorest counties in the state, with one of the highest sales tax in the state, have to say enough is enough. These people are drunken sailors spending our money, our taxpayer money. I want $300 million of this money to go to healthcare, not to some debacle of destroying a historic downtown.
Now, the seeker study was released, and they found that the downtown hospital site was less detrimental than the St. Luke's campus. In that study, it was found that the factors for those three locations that they had narrowed it down to, narrowly, the downtown site had less issues. So with that study now coming out, how are we supposed to prove to those three board members that ultimately did vote yes on downtown and on St. Luke's in the backup location, but primarily voted yes on downtown? If this seeker study doesn't prove it, then what proves that downtown is a detrimental location?
I mean, where do we begin? This has been a sham from day one. You take the Utica Planning Board and you make them the lead agency on seeker. These guys haven't even read the stuff that was submitted. How on earth can anyone come to the conclusion that there would be less of an environmental impact under the standards of seeker, destroying a third of a downtown, than to go to farmland that you already own, that has no environmental issues of brownfields, no displacement of people and businesses, homes, churches, and there's going to be less of an impact to do that in your downtown? Even someone who is not familiar with this at all would be laughing. And I can assure you that those of us in this fight and our legal counsel who do nothing but environmental seeker law have never seen a case this extreme. As they're narrowing down the issues to take to court, their biggest problem, as they shared with us, is there are so many issues that they can bring up legally with regard to Utica seeker process. The problem is narrowing it down and not overwhelming a judge with so many that he or she wouldn't be able to even comprehend it. So we have so many issues that we are bringing forward. We have to narrow it down to our top 4 or 5 because there's so many problems with it. This has been flawed from day one. Anyone who's looked at it knows it is. And when you look at the people who allegedly were supposed to be doing their job, it's pathetic. Now, part of seeker, another important piece, is that you look at traffic patterns, traffic studies, and so on. This view never took into consideration the Nexus Center being built at the Aud, because at the time, it was a hypothetical. It might happen, it might not. We all know that the governor, to his credit, came to our community and announced the money is in place for the Nexus Center. You're building a major facility that is going to hold tournaments, youth hockey tournaments, other types of tournaments, conventions, attached to the auditorium. Luke, at some point, this is going to be across the street potentially from this downtown hospital. How do you not take into consideration the traffic patterns, which is a key piece of seeker? They're also talking about closing streets in our street grid. How do you not look at the impact of that and wonder what is it going to do to the rest of downtown and those businesses that are trying to survive? No one in their right mind, if today I sat down with you and said, let's design a city. We've got an open space, let's design a city. No one in their right mind would put their major entertainment facility across the street from what soon, or they allege, will be our only hospital. Again, with 269 fewer employees and 180 fewer beds.
All right. One more question, and we're going to, I haven't really given you the opportunity to publicly respond to these, so I'll give you that now. The Facebook group, there have been jokes about interviews that I've done, specifically with now the Vice President of Marketing and Communications, Caitlin McCann, about her appearance, degrading things said about her, allegations of racism and homophobia, sexism against Tony Pacini, Anthony Brindisi. Does that help anything? Does that help this fight? Does that attacking people who are doing their best in their job, who are public servants, does that help attacking them on things that are not related to the issue?
Well, first of all, your interview with Ms. McCann speaks for itself. You did an amazing job. You didn't try to trip her up. And it was sad to watch her inability to answer any question you posed. You have prided yourself on being fair with everyone you've interviewed. You've never tried to trip somebody up. She looked ridiculous. The fact that people weighed in and acknowledged that, one, had nothing to do with a shot at you because they've been very impressed with your job. And it was a shot at her, and should be.
And her
because
appearance.
They put her forward. I don't know who took a shot at her appearance. Neither Brett nor I did. Now, these other allegations you're talking about, we have never cared, not for 1 minute, who the county executive may or may not have slept with. That has never been my fight and never will be. It's not Brett's fight. Our fight is the location of this hospital. We are not opposed to the hospital. So when you bring up these other things, this is stuff that the media does and their side does to try to get sympathy. Now, are there some of our members that are pretty riled up about what's about to take place? Their homes, their businesses, stolen through eminent domain? Sure. Have they put some things up? And when they've crossed the line, we've taken them down. As soon as we've seen them and it's come to our attention, we've taken them down. And we'll continue to do that. But I also understand their passions. They're about to lose their livelihoods in some cases. This isn't a game or a joke. What these people are trying to do is destroy our city. So emotions will run high. But if this woman, who is now vice president, and I have no beef with her personally, vice president of communications for MVCC, for Mohawk Valley Healthcare Systems, can't answer a single question of yours without making a fool of herself, that's not our issue, that's hers, and that's MVHS's.
But to make it clear, it's sometimes been unclear whether or not where the group stands on these attacks on things that are not related to the issue. Could you once and for all just say, like, this is not okay, this is not acceptable to have that on our group? I understand that there are passions, but there is a line. The line has been crossed before, and
when it's been
crack
crossed,
down.
we've taken it down. And we will continue to take it down. But I will also not remove members who have been passionate about the fight. This is a battle to save our city. This is a battle to save the taxpayers of the city of Utica. And we will do what it takes to succeed. We will win in the court of law, and I believe we have already won in the court of public opinion.
Where do we see the fight going forward?
Well, we'll see them in court, as they say. I will share this with your viewers. No one else knows this. We had a wonderful lunch yesterday with the new CEO of Mohawk Valley Health Systems. We had a spirited discussion, respectful discussion. It was just the three of us, Brett, myself, and Darlene, a very impressive woman indeed. I can understand why they hired her. I think she's got a tough job trying to sell this and to complete the project. But boy, really impressed with her. I was most impressed because she had extended an invitation for us to meet with her. We were waiting. They then pointed out we hadn't called, so we called. She accepted it as quickly as we called, and she came alone. She did not bring an entourage. We didn't bring an entourage. We rolled up our sleeves. I think we have a better understanding of where each other is coming from, and I have the utmost respect for this woman. She's going to be a hell of a competitor in this fight, and I like that challenge. But I think she's going to be a fair competitor, and I wish she had been here in the beginning, because maybe there'd be a different outcome today.
Do you see going forward perhaps keeping this out of the courts? Do you see perhaps a deal to try and work on moving towards the backup site? I know the seeker filing doesn't speak well for that, but do you see perhaps working with Ms. Stronstadt to try and move towards some sort of agreement?
Well, here's the commitment I made to her, and that is when we defeat them in court, I will call her, not to rub salt in the wound, but to say now I'm ready, able, and willing to do what I did for 20 years and my family before me, and that is raise money to help the hospital once again. I spent 20 years of my life doing that on the Faxton Foundation Board, and then later the Faxton St. Luke's Foundation Board for a total of 20 years. My family before me spent unbelievable amounts of time, energy, and money supporting first Faxton Children's Hospital, and then when it became Faxton alone. So we have always been committed to healthcare in this community, and I made her that promise. I said if and when, but I said when we defeat you in going downtown, I'll be the first call volunteering my services to help you build it at St. Luke's.
Jim Brock, it's been an amazing and interesting year. Thank you very much, as always, for being our first and for being our most recent.
Well, it's a pleasure. You do a hell of a job, and it's an honor to even appear on your podcast. So thank you. And thank your grandfather, who I'm a big fan of.